Greetings, Dr. G here. G for George and G for Generative Gaze. Welcome to the Generative Gaze YouTube channel. I am so thrilled because today we have a special guest, Professor Emerita Uchenna Vasser, also known as Uche. Uche, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for this wonderful opportunity.
My pleasure. I had the opportunity to meet Uche last year when we attended a summer institute at Indiana University. And so that's one of the things we will be discussing today. But I'd like to start by asking you, Uche, about your origin story, where you were born, where you grew up, where you studied, how you found alignment with your life's purpose. Take it away, Uche.
Thanks again. And I am a product of that wonderful city in Nigeria called Lagos. Lagos used to be the capital of Nigeria and now is the commercial capital of Nigeria. I grew up in Lagos in the 70s, and my mother was a fixture at the what they call the FRCN, the um, uh, radio station, if you will, of Nigeria. And my father was a banker. And I went from Lagos to Yorkshire to Escrick Park, where I completed my secondary and what we call the A levels in the UK. And from there, I went on to Spain, where I, earned a degree in psychology. I'm a major in Spanish. And because of my knowledge of Spanish and being an African woman, I was invited to become a graduate student at Ohio State University. And from the Ohio State University, I went on to UNC Chapel Hill in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So, in a nutshell, that's me from birth in Lagos to the United States, North Carolina.
Uche, let me ask you, when you set off as a young girl for Yorkshire,
Yorkshire. Mhm.
what were your aspirations? Tell us a little bit about that experience.
That's an interesting question. I'm fascinated when I meet young people and I ask them questions and they say to me, "Oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer." I wanted to be me, and I don't know that my education in the UK was something that I wanted to do. It was something that my parents thought was the best thing for me as a young Nigerian woman who was going to get the best education ever. And so, in hindsight, I say thank you to my dad and I say thank you to my mom because they set me in this direction to get this wonderful education. Who I am today, accent and all, and what I do in the African diaspora, or the Spanish-speaking African diaspora, is all thanks to this path that my parents cut for me. I wasn't quite aware of where they were going, but I'm so glad they did it.
Thank you for sharing that. So, why Spain?
Yes, good question. So after Yorkshire, Escrick Park, which again was a small school, Queen Margaret School, with about under 400 students. I wanted to do something exciting. I wanted to be in London, where all the action was, and I wanted to model, which was what London I thought had to offer someone like me. But in a nutshell, my father said no. And so to make it maybe a trade-off, if you will. I ended up going to school in Spain. So again, as a rebellious act, if you will. So I am in Spain, and went to school there, and I'm glad I did because it turned out to be a better. I was in Madrid. It turned out to be a better city than London at the time.
May I ask what years you were in Madrid?
So I was in Madrid from 1983. I was there for 5 years.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So was Franco still in power? What?
No, no, not at all, not at all. Franco was gone by then.
Mhm.
I think Franco left in 1975, if I'm not mistaken. Spain was coming out of a very restrictive period when I got to Spain, and I think uh, because of so many years of being prohibited, if you will, from doing certain things. Spain was um, a very experimental city. I should say Madrid, rather, was a very experimental city. Just about everything was okay. And I'm thinking that that was because of the repressive period that most people lived during the time. So everything was going great in Madrid. Great nightlife, great people, great parties. It was just a really good place to be in the 1980s.
Wonderful. And then that led you to graduate work at the Ohio State University. What did
That
you
is correct.
learn?
Say that again.
What was your field of study?
So at the Ohio State University, because the invitation was to study Spanish and not psychology, which was my major. So I went to the Ohio State University. Won't forget Dye Hall, and that was no, that was Coombs Hall rather. Dye Hall was at UNC Chapel Hill. Coombs Hall, where I majored in Romance languages and literatures.
So, how many Romance languages do you speak?
Well, in the Ohio State University was Spanish, but when I got to UNC Chapel Hill, I added Portuguese to it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Any compelling life experiences at the Ohio State that you'd like to share with our audience?
Um, yeah, well, that's interesting. So that was my first time in the US, and the Ohio State University was still is a very big institution. Never been in anything like that. It was a little bit overwhelming. Um, and I would say that it wasn't the best experience because, again, the size was a bit, you had to find your way. Nobody was going to help you find it. And so that's part of the growing up, I suppose, being in America. And Columbus, Ohio was a place that outside of the university seemed a little bit too, it wasn't rural, but the mindset seemed to be that. So all the advancement or thinking in a cosmopolitan way occurred on campus. Outside of campus was a little bit different, but it was a good experience overall. Perhaps not as good as when I taught in Minnesota. That was a great experience. And in Chapel Hill, that was another great experience.
So, give me a sense of the time. You landed in the United States when?
So after 5 years, so that was in 1989.
Hmm.
Yes.
And you did how many years at the Ohio State before
So
going?
that was to graduate school. That was 2 years. And
Oh,
then from there, I went off to Minnesota to teach for 18 months, teach
really?
Spanish at um, what is it called? The University of Minnesota, Morris.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Graduate students?
No, this was undergrad. So it was my first stint teaching Spanish after graduating from the Ohio State University.
And what did you learn?
That now, I loved Mars, the one of the small town, but full of wonderful people. And I was there for 18 months, and that was a really, really good experience. It made up for the awkward experience in Columbus, Ohio. So I'm glad I went to Morris, Minnesota, because it showed me that Americans are wonderful people. Columbus, I didn't get that experience, but in Morris, Minnesota, it was really great.
I'm sure we're going to have to let the citizens of Mars, Minnesota know about this interview.
Yes, yes. Yeah, because it was a great experience. Wonderful people.
Now, when you went to pursue your doctoral studies at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, what was your major focus?
So, by the time I got to UNC Chapel Hill, I was aware of the African descended peoples of Latin America, um, Spanish speaking in particular, because I knew about the Jamaicans anyway that were in the Caribbean, and I knew about people from Barbados who spoke English, but very little information about the African descended peoples who spoke Spanish and those who spoke Portuguese in Brazil. And so when I got to UNC Chapel Hill, I wanted to focus on the Afro-Hispanic elements. So my focus was Afro-Hispanic studies, where I was introduced to the wonderful, wonderful writers of the Spanish-speaking world of Latin America and the Caribbean. Nicolas Guillen, Nancy Morejon, Manuel Zapata Olivella, um, Estupinian Bass, the whole group of them who just wrote wonderful things that unfortunately the American audience was slow to embrace simply because of the language barrier and perhaps also because of the racial composition of the writers.
Now, I understand you also focused some of your field work in Colombia.
Yes. So my dissertation was on the writer Manuel Zapata Olivella, who's Afro-Colombian, Afro-Colombiano, and he wrote this magnificent novel called Shango El Gran Putas, which is kind of sounds like a bad word, but it's not. But in essence, his novel was about so he decided to reconstruct the origination of the African person in the Americas. And it was slavery, but it was more of a banishment. And the African man was banished from the continent simply because Shango, a Yoruba god, had been exiled from the kingdom, and in his anger, he pronounced exile on the African person, and so the African person was destined to go to a faraway land. However, Shango's pronouncement was also one that was peppered by a kind of an apology, if you will, for having done what he did, because in Shango's mind, the African was going to return to Africa at some point in the future. And so Manuel Zapata Oliveira's novel is about the African man in the faraway land looking for ways to return to his place of origination. Fascinating novel, written in Spanish, but has been translated into English, and I forget the name of the translator right now. It's a huge novel, but again, a wonderful take on how the dispersal of the African in the Americas. So that was my the basis of my dissertation, and Manuel Zapata Olivella is from the Caribbean side of Colombia. So I went there to do my field work. But it's so my dissertation is on that. I can recommend that you read the introduction because it is it is something that I think leads people down the path of who was Manuel Zapata Oliveira and the story of the Afro-Colombian overall, because the Afro-Colombian has done incredible work to lead that led to his liberation and freedom and his overcoming.
Thank you so much for that. I'm looking forward to reading that introduction. Now, I recall you talking about a village of African folks
Yes,
who refused the shackles, the maroons. I don't know what they call them in Colombia, but through
palenqueros.
palenqueros,
Sí,
throughout the Americas, you find these communities of Africans and indigenous people who find a space,
yes,
usually isolated, and live with dignity in peace. And so
absolutely.
if you would share a little bit about that village and, what you learned from them.
Yes, a wonderful story, and so Cartagena was a port that played a significant role. So Cartagena is a port on the Caribbean side of Colombia, played a significant role in bringing in Africans who were now taken to different parts of Latin America. And so we have the story of Bencos Biojo. Bencos Biojo was one such slave who made it to Cartagena, but obviously decided that freedom was better than servitude. And so he runs away and he creates this runaway slave settlement called Palenque de San Basilio. And so Palenque de San Basilio is a place that offered shelter to the hundreds of Africans who preferred freedom over servitude. And Palenque de San Basilio is actually a UNESCO, what is the phrase? So the UNESCO,
World Heritage Site?
right, so that's what it is now. And it's a village on the outskirts of Cartagena that I recommend that everybody visit because it's a place where time stood still for centuries, the Africans that beat back the incursion of Europeans stayed in their African element in Palenque de San Basilio and and so going there is a microcosm, if you will, of an African nation or African village, if you will. And one interesting aspect of Bencos Biojo and his Palenque was the fact that the African braided hair, played a role as a roadmap for many slaves who were encouraged to run away from the plantation, from their masters' clutches. And so the braids were excellent roadmaps for these slaves to find their way to Palenque de San Basilio, where they lived as free men and women.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing that with us. If we could pivot now to talk about your work at the university, I believe it was Winston Salem State University where you taught,
That is
mostly
correct.
undergraduates,
Yes,
and you had opportunities to take your students on field trips
yes,
in Latin America as well. Would you
yes.
talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I taught at Winston Salem State University in the Department of World Languages and Cultures, and I taught Spanish. That was my primary role until I convinced them. We had a wonderful professor there who was also a scholar of Afro-Hispanic literature, but courses in Afro-Hispanic literature were not offered. And Winston-Salem State University is an HBCU, a historically Black institution. And so it was important, I felt that students should study something about the African diaspora. And so we managed to get students to start taking courses from literature to culture and so on and so forth, history of the African presence in Latin America and the Caribbean, with a particular focus on the Spanish-speaking African presence. And so for that, I would take students to, we started with Mexico. Mexico was, it's right around the corner, and Mexico has a rich history, not just of the Black presence in southern Mexico, but of the Mesoamerican history, fascinating history for our students. Then we had the opportunity to create a program that took students also to Cuba. We did Brazil, but that's not one of my area is actually more Spanish speaking. But we did have a programs in Brazil as well. But so my students, I took them to Cuba and I took them to Mexico.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, in July of 2024, our paths first crossed.
Yes.
We went to the National Endowment of Humanities funded Summer Institute at Indiana University,
Mhm.
and I'm so grateful for that.
So am I.
The program was entitled Content Warning: Engaging Trauma in Research Collections. I believe that was it.
Yes.
You want to talk about that?
That was a wonderful, and I've used the word wonderful so many times because there are a lot of wonderful things anyway. That was a great experience. And like you said, it was an opportunity to meet you, and you have been a great resource person and a great inspiration, I should say. But one of the things that I took away from the institute was the fact that we needed to have more of a focus of the trauma and memory of slavery, particularly the transatlantic slave trade. We talk about it as if it's something that happened, it's over, move on, done with it. However, I have a program in Nigeria at the moment that has given the institute has given me another way of looking at what I see in a place like Nigeria. Um, Not far from where we have our program is the port of Calabar. The port of Calabar was one of the points of no return for a lot of Africans who left the Nigerian hinterland through the Bight of Biafra. So there's a port of no return. And when you go there, you so it's not just the fact that it was the last place of embracing of an African origination for many Africans, but that those Africans that were left behind also suffered a loss because they lost people that they loved. They would never know what happened to these people. And so, looking at Africa, looking at Nigeria today, I see that the relevance of what we did in Bloomington is something that I would like to focus on a little bit more. There is trauma, there was trauma, but there is memory. And I think that that would help with the process of reconnecting, which is what our program is in Nigeria, reconnecting Africa with the African diaspora, particularly the Spanish-speaking African diaspora.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so glad that you mentioned Slanglobal. I want you to talk a little bit about it. Where does the name come from?
Well, the name is actually really just being funny. The whole it is the Association for Spanish Language Advancement in Nigeria. I thought it was rather long. And it was going to be what it is what it is, but people were thinking, oh, it's all about Spanish and what else? And some people don't want well, they know the Spanish, but they don't see the relevance of Spanish in their, you know, in what they do on a daily basis. But more than Spanish, it was going to be an opportunity to reconnect the Spanish-speaking African diaspora with the African continent. That's the goal. That's the principal goal of Slanglobal. So where did the name Slanglobal come from? It became something to attract people to us. It was something almost nonsensical, but one that made people ask, "What are you?" And once they asked, "What are you?" we let them know who we are. So that was the idea.
So, as I understand it, you're a nonprofit,
Yes,
you're registered in the Federal Republic of Nigeria,
that is correct.
have this incredible program, not only speaking Spanish, studying, teaching Spanish,
Mhm.
but empowering women. I believe it's called Masqui.
That is correct. Yes.
Oh,
So, yes. So, thanks for that. So, we have a number of things going on. Understanding the Afro-Latinos also means understanding their cultures, and understanding the cultures requires some kind of exchange, if you will. And the exchange is foundational to the women's empowerment program that we have. So there is a women's empowerment program that we call the Mask We. The Mask We project is empowering women economically, but giving them a cultural awareness from the Spanish-speaking world that they are not aware of, and using that knowledge to create something new, something novel. And in this case, we created a different way of looking at the mask. The mask is something intrinsic in the Igbo culture, well, actually not just the Igbo culture, in many African cultures anyway. But it's almost always gender specific. That is, it's male focused. And so what we decided to do was take the mask and simply appropriate a cultural aspect of Latin America and put it on the mask to make it something that is unique. And that's what we did.
awesome. You have a website. Would you please share it with our viewers?
Definitely. It is so if you look up Slang Global, I believe you will find us. I don't know if I can write it here.
You can put it in the chat, but I tell you what, we
Tell
will
me.
we will append the information about your website and some very exciting pictures of the artwork the women are doing and the QR code to your Shopify account so
That'll
that
be great.
want to order masks can do so.
That'll be great. Thank you so much. The women will be very appreciative, and I am too, because um, we in Africa are very amazing people, but we also need all the help we can get because of geographic, historical, economic um, processes that seem to not be in our favor many times. So thank you very much for that.
Truly my pleasure. You know, there's so much for us to explore together. I'd like to invite you to come back. I'd like to invite you to tell us about students or colleagues you think would give us an interview, as well as some of your students and the women that you're working with in Enugu, Nigeria. Will you do that?
I would love to do that. What we're doing is not to hide anything. We're not in the business of trying to create something and not show it. We are creating an awareness and any which way possible. And because at the end of the day, I realize I am blessed to be able to be in this position to do what I'm doing. But I realize now that that blessing is actually for the women who I come across every day, young, not so young. Um, I wish I'd done this earlier, but it's okay because, right, because it's almost like, oh, there's so much to do, there's so much, but I guess, there's a time for everything. So we are very, very happy to showcase what we do. We showcase Slanglobal, showcase our programs on a daily basis, showcase those people who come, not just women, men too. We have a Feed the Children program on Fridays. And just an aside for the Feed the Children. So we're doing it twice a month. So every Friday, twice a month, we feed children. And if I don't look at my calendar, I mean, I have great workers who are ready, but the children are also ready. They come to the gate and they wait for us. So if I don't remember, all I have to do is look at the gate at about 2:30 on the Friday, and the children are gathering. And I'm like, this is amazing. So the first time I saw that, I was like, what are these children doing here? They were like, it's Feed the Children Friday. So we have that. And I know this is a conversation, but what we do is also to do it well. We need a donation. So I hope that you will also allow me to put that out there to say if anyone's willing to, doesn't have to be a whole lot, just anything. Feeding one child, feeding 10. Um, you feel happy, I feel happy, everybody, we're all very happy about what we do.
Beautiful. Thank you. That takes me back to generativity,
Mm.
concern for future generations. And certainly Slang Global's program, Feed the Children Fridays, is part of that. So we thank you here at Generative Gaze for that commitment. So here I am with Professor Emerita Uche Vasser, my friend and colleague, signing off on Tuesday, July 8th, 2025.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.